Get out of here and never come back. It's been 15 years, but I've never forgotten those words from my father. He said them to me the day I told him I'd been awarded a scholarship. I used to think they'd be proud of me if I earned a scholarship, but they weren't. My parents wanted me to study medicine just like my sister Emma. I disagreed. I went against their wishes, and that's when they told me to leave. Then, a month ago, after 15 years of complete silence, they came back begging for forgiveness after finding out I was the resort owner where my sister was getting married. I said no. And once again, I chose to disappear from their lives for good. Follow my story and tell me, was I wrong for walking away from my flesh and blood? My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old and currently living in New York, co-owner of a luxury beachfront resort where every weekend is lit up with music, lights, and extravagant weddings hosted by the elite. Looking at me now, no one would guess I was kicked out of my home at 18 for one simple reason. I refused to study medicine, the path my parents had planned for me. It's not that I hated medicine. It just wasn't mine. I loved finance. I enjoyed analyzing charts, reading reports, understanding how money flows, and figuring out how to turn a small idea into a system that generates millions. That year, I earned a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university in New York, not because anyone pulled strings, but purely through my hard work. But to my parents, that wasn't an achievement. To them, I was just a rebellious daughter who dared to defy their expectations. I remember it like it was yesterday. What happened 15 years ago? I had just returned from a walk that afternoon when I noticed our mailbox stuffed with large envelopes. As I sifted through them, I spotted a familiar logo, University, one of the most prestigious schools in New York. I had applied to their finance program. I froze for a moment. Then, as I tore the envelope open, my heart leaped out of my chest. Full scholarship, I whispered, eyes scanning the bold print. Finance major, Gabelli School of Business. I jumped up in the yard, laughing like a crazy person. My mind spun with images. Elite classes, finance seminars, numbers dancing across Excel spreadsheets, and above all, the thought of my parents nodding with pride, just like they used to look at my sister Emma with admiration in their eyes when she got into med school. That whole afternoon, I couldn't focus on anything. I was waiting for dinner. I would tell them, and for the first time, I'd finally be seen as something to be proud of, not just the shadow trailing behind my sister's success. That dinner was simple, just grilled meat and salad, but it felt like the biggest celebration of my life. I waited until everyone started dessert. As my mom poured the last cup of tea, I took a deep breath and said, "Mom, Dad, I have some good news to share." The table fell silent for a moment. My dad looked at me, squinting. "Yeah? What is it?" I pulled the letter from my pocket and handed it over. "I got a full scholarship to Forum University. Finance major. I'll be starting this fall." There was a long pause. My mom held her teacup midair, frozen. My dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. The silence felt heavier with each second. No one said a word. Then my dad placed his hands on the table, eyes locked onto mine. "Finance," he said flatly, his voice low but heavy with pressure. "You applied for finance without telling us?" I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. "I know you both wanted me to study medicine, but that's not what I want. I found my passion in finance a long time ago. I wasn't hiding anything. I just wanted to wait until I had the results." Right then, Emma let out a sarcastic laugh and leaned back in her chair. "Oh, God. Finance, Claire. Finance, Claire. What are you going to do with a bunch of numbers? Count money for other people?" I looked at her and spoke slowly, every word deliberate. "No, I'm going to build a career. I'm good at numbers, good at analysis. I want to help businesses make smart decisions. I don't want to spend my life in a hospital room." My dad cut in sharply, his tone suddenly stern. "You think that path is worth throwing away everything we planned for you? Finance isn't a career to build a life on. It's a leech's job." I sat up straight, meeting his gaze. "I'm not saying it's more noble than medicine. I'm saying I know where I'm meant to be, and for once I've been recognized for it. You can't dismiss that because it doesn't fit your plan." Then my dad set his glass down on the table and said, calmly but with each word like a nail in the wall, "Then hear me loud and clear. If you don't study medicine, don't expect this family to pay a single cent. No tuition, no housing, no allowance. You want to do it your way? Then you handle it on your own." My mom finally spoke, her voice soft but cold. Claire, if you've decided to go a different direction, you must also accept the consequences. Your father's right. We can't keep supporting you if you no longer follow the path we believe is best for you." I was stunned. I understood what it felt like to be truly alone for the first time. Not one person at that table was willing to stand by me. I looked at my dad. "So if I don't study medicine, I'm no longer welcome here?" My dad nodded without hesitation. "That's right. Starting tomorrow, you pay your way. You find your place. You cover your own life. If you've chosen your path, walk it all the way." I sat in silence for a moment. Then my voice, steady, replied, "All right, I'll leave. I'll stand on my own, and I'll prove every bit of it by myself." And at that moment, my dad looked straight into my eyes and said slowly, like it was the final word, "Then leave, and don't ever come back." No one said another word. My mom turned her face away. Emma went back to her phone like I no longer existed. I stood up quietly, picked up my scholarship letter, and walked upstairs. I closed the door behind me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in the room that used to be mine, getting ready to leave it one last time. Tomorrow morning, I'd be gone, and I wasn't coming back. Not out of anger, but deep down I knew I didn't belong here anymore. That night was my last night in the house I had called home for 18 years. Couldn't sleep. Lying there in the dark, all I could hear was the steady ticking of the clock, each second like a soft knock echoing memories I'd buried long ago. I remember being a curious kid, full of imagination. I loved building paper cities, drawing neighborhoods with markers, and designing restaurants, banks, and even subway stations. I could spend hours just rearranging the layout of roads and zones. My mom once saw it and said, "This girl is only good at making up useless little things." My dad was even blunter. "Throw that stuff away. If you want to be good at something, memorize the periodic table. Otherwise, don't dream about doing anything important." From the time I was little, they had a standard, an ideal I was expected to follow. And that ideal had a name, Emma. My sister is 2 years older than me. Even in elementary school, Emma was the pride of the family. A straight-A student, well-spoken, disciplined, and always doing the right thing. By high school, she was chosen for the national biology team and accepted into a prestigious pre-med program. Everything she did became the benchmark. "Why can't you be more like your sister? Emma's responsible. You waste time on nonsense." In 9th grade, I was selected for a school pilot program focused on small-scale investing. I spent my whole summer reading finance books and learning about markets. When I came home excited to tell my mom, all she said was, "You'd be better off preparing for the SAT. Don't waste energy on something with no future." Another time, I brought up my interest in business management or finance. My dad didn't even pause before responding. "Making money is someone else's job, not yours. You were born to do something useful, not count money for the rich." Emma never had to try to be loved. As for me, the more I wanted to prove I had value, the more I was pushed aside. Anytime I did something outside the plan they had in mind, it wasn't seen as ambition. It was seen as a deviation, something that needed fixing. The following day, after my dad told me to leave, I got up early. The sunlight hadn't even made it through the curtains yet, but I had been awake for hours. I quietly packed my things, a worn-out backpack, a few changes of clothes, a notebook, a pair of running shoes, and the scholarship letter I had read at least a dozen times during the night. I walked out of the house at 7 a.m. My mom was in the kitchen washing dishes. My dad sat on the couch reading the newspaper like any other day. Emma was nowhere to be seen, probably still asleep. No one looked at me. No one said a word. No voice called after me. No hand reached out to stop me. And just like that, I left my family behind with exactly $2,000 to my name, the money I had saved from odd jobs and birthday gifts I'd never spent. I started my new life working as a cashier at a small restaurant near Midtown. I hadn't started school yet, so I worked full-time, paid weekly, and lived in a tiny staff dorm behind the restaurant. It was cramped but clean, and it was enough to keep me fed and off the street. I worked there for nearly 2 months, from early morning till late at night. No one knew I'd been kicked out of my home. No one asked why I always carried my backpack everywhere. I just kept my head down, worked quietly, and started learning the language of adulthood, how to communicate, endure, and survive. When my first semester at Forum started, I applied to move into the campus dorms. It was a small room with 2 roommates, a bunk bed, and a worn-out desk. But to me, it was the beginning of freedom. I studied and worked simultaneously as a teaching assistant, library clerk, and part-time kitchen help in the cafeteria. No weekends, no spring breaks, but I never complained because I knew no one was behind me anymore. 4 years of college passed quietly. I never missed a class, never missed a deadline, I never wasted a dollar. I learned how to manage every cent, every hour of the day, like a soldier laying bricks one by one to build her fortress. There were nights I'd sit alone on campus, looking at the lights glowing from the dorm windows and wonder, do my parents ever think about me? Did they ever consider calling me just once? But there were no messages, no calls, no, how are you, not even a birthday email. And slowly I came to realize maybe to them I was already gone. I graduated with honors after 4 relentless years of studying and working nonstop. My name was on the dean's list, and my academic advisor even nominated me for a prestigious European graduate program. I should have felt proud. And I did, if only for a fleeting moment, right after stepping out of the room where they announced the results. That same night, I texted my mom. Just a straightforward message. I've graduated. The ceremony is this Saturday. I'd be happy if you, Dad, and Emma could come. I stared at the screen, and the read immediately popped up beneath my message. I waited 10 minutes, an hour, the whole evening, but nothing came back. No reply. No congratulations. No, we'll be there. Just silence. Still, I tried to calm myself. Maybe Mom was busy. Maybe Dad hadn't seen it yet. Maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me by showing up that day. I wanted to believe that, even if it was only 1%. Graduation day. I put on my cap and gown, straightened my collar, and walked into the auditorium as the ceremonial music played. The seats for families were packed, rows upon rows filled with proud parents, siblings, and loved ones. I scanned the crowd, left side, center, right. No familiar faces. I told myself maybe they were just late, so I kept glancing over every few minutes, feeling a little sting in my chest each time. An hour passed, then they called my name. I walked up to the stage and accepted my diploma from the dean. The room erupted in applause. My classmates cheered. Their families stood up and raised their cameras, smiling with joy. I just smiled faintly, then stepped down. That was the moment I truly knew. They weren't coming, and they never intended to. Right then, surrounded by music, clapping, and hundreds of glowing faces, something inside me quietly shut down. I had tried. I had opened my heart. I had hoped, sent a message, saved them a seat. And in return, all I got was a cold absence. That day, as I walked out of the auditorium, I made a silent decision in my mind. They don't need me, and from now on, I won't keep reaching for them either. Graduating with honors and a strong academic record, it didn't take long for me to land my first job. Just a few weeks after commencement, I received an offer to work as a financial advisor at one of the top firms in Manhattan. Starting salary, $150,000 a year. I read that number multiple times to ensure I wasn't seeing things. I started as soon as the contract was signed. In the beginning, I barely had time to breathe. I was in the office by 7 o'clock a.m. and rarely left before 8 o'clock p.m., but I never complained. I knew every dollar I earned was built on years of sacrifice. And I didn't stop there. After work, I took on freelance financial consulting contracts for startups and mid-sized businesses, nights and weekends. Some classmates said I was crazy, burning myself out too early. I just smiled. To me, this wasn't burnout. This was building leverage for the future. Within 3 years, I had saved over $1 million in cash, not counting bonuses and income from consulting. I started diving deeper into investing, real estate, stocks, private equity, and venture capital. I read everything I could, attended seminars, and never hesitated to ask questions from those ahead of me. I made mistakes too. Once I lost tens of thousands in a week, but I didn't quit. I learned from those failures. And by the time I turned 30, I looked at my financial report, a diversified portfolio, properties in 3 different states, equity in 4 startups, a solid savings account, net worth over $10 million. 2 years ago, on a Friday evening after work, I got a call from 2 of my closest friends, Nate and Claire. We'd known each other since college and bonded over our love for investing, travel, and food. "We've got a crazy idea," Nate said, excitement in his voice. "Claire, How would you feel about starting a luxury beachfront resort that also hosts high-end wedding events? At first, I thought they were joking. But the more I listened, the more I realized they weren't dreaming unquestioningly. They had already found a stunning piece of coastal property down south with sweeping ocean views and mild weather year-round. Claire, a chef with years of experience in five-star resorts, would head the kitchen and guest services. Nate would handle operations and tourism management. They only needed one thing: capital and financial vision. And me? After years of saving and building, I was finally ready to bet on myself. I invested the seed capital and designed the financial model, shaped the long-term strategy, and led the guest experience vision. But I didn't want this place to be just another wedding venue. I wanted it to be an unforgettable experience, a once-in-a-lifetime memory for every couple who said "I do" on our grounds. Our team meticulously planned every detail, from a golden-lit ceremony on a sun-drenched beach to an intimate dinner under warm, hanging lights. I built a service system that even I, as a guest, would be blown away by. Our staff was trained to five-star standards. Every dish told a story, crafted by our head chef. Every wedding was a fully personalized journey for each couple. In just 2 years, our venue became one of the most sought-after wedding destinations on the East Coast. Couples came from everywhere: New York, Boston, even Canada, booking months in advance to get a date. On wedding forums, names like Aurora by the Sea and the Claire Thompson Experience became the new gold standard for outdoor weddings. In the 15 years since I walked out of that old house, I hadn't received a single call, a message, or even the faintest sign of life from my parents or Emma. No birthday wishes, no check-ins, not even a simple "Are you okay?" At first, I still held on to hope. A part of me, stubborn as it was, believed they would miss me. That someday maybe Mom would send a message to say, "I've been thinking about you." But year after year, the silence stretched on. Every birthday, I'd quietly turn off my phone at midnight to avoid watching the screen light up for no one. Eventually, I learned to accept their absence as part of life. I stopped counting the days since I last heard my father's voice. I stopped waiting for Thanksgiving to bring a text that never came. I lived in peace, no bitterness. There were no attempts to reconnect, not because I hated them, but because I no longer needed a forced presence to fill a hollow space. I built my life like someone who had walked out of the fire but never looked back at the flames. And in conversations with friends or business partners, when someone mentioned family, I would smile and say, "We're no longer in contact." Then gently steer the topic elsewhere. Polite, calm, just enough for them not to ask more. 15 years. Enough time for a wound to become a scar. I truly believed that whatever existed between me and my family was over, sealed for good. But fate, never a fan of quiet endings, decided to play its hand again. About a month ago, I got a call from our resort's event manager. "Claire, we've got a big wedding next weekend," she said excitedly. "The bride's family just booked the platinum package. Full oceanfront garden, private access, the works. Seems like they've got money. Ceremony at 3:00 p.m., dinner reception after that." I pulled up the system calendar. As with all our top-tier events, one of our co-founders would always show up to deliver a thank you gift in person, a brand signature I had introduced from day one. That day happened to be my turn. I didn't think much of it. High-end weddings were just another weekend norm. I threw on a simple suit, pinned our resort badge to my lapel, and made my way to the welcome area like I'd done dozens of times before. I arrived just before 3:00 p.m. The team was setting up the gift table, sunlight spilling over the crisp white linens. And then I saw them, 3 people stepping out of a private rental SUV. My father, my mother, and Emma. She was glowing in a pristine white wedding gown, holding a bouquet, arm in arm with a tall groom, smiling like her life was a movie. My heart paused, not from emotion, but from the surreal weight of the moment. There I was, face to face with the people who had thrown me out, now hosting a wedding for their daughter at my resort. They didn't recognize me at first, not until Emma glanced my way, froze, and narrowed her eyes. My mother squinted from afar, frowning slightly. Standing behind them, my father gave that puzzled look people give when they see someone they should remember. Then they approached me, not to hug, not to say, "It's been so long." They had only one message, delivered sharply, without hesitation, by Emma herself. I didn't know you worked here, but you better stay out of sight. This is my day, and I don't want anything ruining it. I looked at the three of them, Dad, Mom, and Emma. Like rereading a chapter I thought I'd already burned. Long time no see, I said, calm but clear. Didn't expect the reunion to happen here of all places. Emma folded her arms, her stare laced with venom. What are you doing here? Working the door? If you're looking for a job, this isn't the time. Today is about me, not your sad little comeback. I held back a sigh. I'm not here to ask for anything. I'm just doing my job, and I ran into people who once chose to forget I existed. My mom stepped forward slightly, her voice dry. If you leave this family, don't come back to disturb it. You're no longer one of us, Claire. I nodded. No argument, I know, and I've never forgotten that. I was about to step aside and let them pass, but Emma wasn't done. She walked up, holding her half-empty water bottle, and stopped right before me. You know what? She said, eyes locked onto mine. That smug face of yours makes me sick. And in one sudden motion, she threw the entire bottle of water straight into my face. Cold water splashed over my eyes, hair, and shirt collar. I didn't flinch. I closed my eyes briefly and let the water slide down my cheek. Each drop hit the high-end stone tiles beneath me, the ones I had picked out when we built this place. Hope that wakes you up, she sneered, satisfied as if she had just claimed some victory. My father stood still, said nothing. My mother turned her head, pretending the scene was somehow acceptable. I pulled a handkerchief from my pocket and wiped my face calmly. Emma stood there, seething, like what she'd done was entirely justified. Then, without even a pause, she added, I hope this is the last time you ever show your face around this family. Just then, one of our resort security staff approached. His name was Miguel. He had been with us for nearly 3 years, one of the most trusted in our team. He stopped a few feet away, nodded respectfully at me, and asked, just loud enough for them all to hear, Everything all right, Miss Claire? That question, short, gentle, dropped into the moment like a stone into still water. All three of them froze. My father's brows drew together. Emma looked at Miguel, then back at me, her eyes suddenly cautious. And my mother, she looked confused, unsure how to hide her reaction. I turned to Miguel and gave a slight nod. All good, thanks. Then I looked back at the family I used to belong to, adjusted the lapel of my now damp suit, and said nothing more. The reception unfolded just like the hundreds of weddings we'd hosted before. Soft golden lights blanketed perfectly set tables. Gentle music flowed through the air, and the cheerful clinking of glasses echoed across the room. I stood behind the scenes, watching through the frosted glass panel. On stage, Emma and her groom were raising their glasses with the guests, laughing, posing for photos, glowing like nothing had happened just hours ago at the front gate. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was waiting for the right moment. And then it came. The resort manager, Lisa, stepped up to the stage with a mic. She'd been with me since day one, helping build this place from the ground up, a woman of precision, strength, and impeccable timing. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice calm, her smile composed. Before the dinner celebration, we have a special gift for today's bride and groom, and this one will be presented by the owner of this resort herself. The room paused for a beat. People started glancing around, curious. Then the side door near the stage opened. I stepped out slowly and steadily in a sharp black suit, posture calm and collected. Under the soft spotlight, I could see every pair of eyes turn to me, some wide with surprise, others frozen in confusion, and a few in pure disbelief. Emma's mouth dropped open. She stared at me like I'd walked out of the grave. My father's brow tensed, his face shifting from shock to something close to rage, as if he were trying to convince himself that what he was seeing wasn't real. My mother gripped the armrest of her chair, her face drained of all color. I stopped at center stage, took the mic from Lisa, and offered a polite, composed smile. My name is Claire Thompson, co-owner of Aurora by the Sea. Thank you all for choosing our resort to celebrate this special day. On behalf of the entire team, we wish the bride and groom a full and joyful life together. The room fell into a stillness. No more clinking glasses, no murmurs, just a silence that stretched like a held breath. Guests began whispering, Wait, she's the owner? Isn't she the one that got water thrown at her outside earlier? I looked toward the front row where the 3 people who had once cast me out now sat. None of them said a word, not one. Right after I offered my well wishes, a server in formal attire stepped onto the stage carrying a small, pearl-colored box. Inside was a finely crafted diamond ring, a $5,000 gift reserved exclusively for couples who booked our platinum package. The light caught the gem just right, and the entire room seemed to pause for a brief moment. I turned toward the bride and groom, ready to present the gift as always, but then a voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding like a blade. "Stop!" Heads turned. Claire, my close friend and one of the resort's co-founders, was making her way up to the stage, her eyes unwavering, her steps firm. In one hand, she held a tablet. With the other, she raised her palm to halt the presentation. She turned to Emma and spoke loud and clear. "This gift is canceled. We do not present gifts to guests who insult, humiliate, or behave abusively toward any member of our team or partners." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. With one tap, Claire lifted the tablet and synced it to the massive screen behind the stage. "And to clarify why we've made this decision," she said firmly, "we'd like to show a clip from the security camera at the front gate taken at 3 p.m. today." The screen lit up, and then the footage played. No edits, no cuts. Emma stepping forward, holding a water bottle. Her throwing it straight into my face. Water splashing everywhere, her words cold and venomous. "Hope that wakes you up." My face soaked but composed. I didn't retaliate, and then Miguel, our head of security, walked up and addressed me as Miss Claire. In less than 30 seconds, every mask in the room came off. A collective gasp echoed through the hall. Guests began whispering to each other. An older gentleman seated near the front muttered aloud, "My God, she did that to the owner of this place." Emma froze, pale as her dress. My mother sat stiff as stone, and my father, he had no words for the first time in his life. Claire turned off the screen, adjusted the mic, and said firmly, "Here, we don't give gifts to cover up the truth. We give them when there's respect." The entire hall fell into a suffocating silence when the screen went dark. Then the whispers began. A few guests rose from their seats. An older woman shook her head and said loud enough for many to hear, "I'm not staying to watch any more of this." Chairs scraped back. Footsteps echoed. One table of 6 quietly gathered their belongings and left. Then the next table followed. In less than 5 minutes, nearly a third of the guests had stood up, silently packing their purses and wedding gifts, and exited the room without a word. A group of younger guests couldn't help but comment, "Well, this is a wedding to remember. She threw water at the owner. Who even does that?" Emma stood frozen at the center of the stage. As the whispers grew louder, she began to crack. Her eyes turned red, and then, unable to hold it in any longer, she burst into tears. She spun toward me, jabbing a finger in my direction, her voice nearly a scream. "This is your fault! You planned this! You ruined my wedding to get revenge!" I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't say a word. I looked at her with the calm, cold, and unshaken gaze of someone who knew exactly who she was and no longer needed to prove it to anyone. Claire stood beside me, arms crossed, her expression saying everything without a word. "You brought this on yourself." The groom leaned in, whispering something to Emma. But by then, she was beyond reach, sobbing, trembling, unraveling in front of a crowd now buzzing with discomfort and disbelief. My parents sat still, paralyzed in the eye of the storm. No one came to them. No one asked if they were okay. The wedding they had likely planned down to the last detail, perfect, polished, prestigious, was crumbling like a cruel joke in slow motion. And me? I stood there silent, composed, like an outsider who ironically had become the center of everything. Amid the crumbling room filled with uncertain glances and the shuffle of guests quietly making their exit, Claire took one more step forward. Her voice, calm to the point of chilling, cut through the chaos like it had been waiting patiently for this very moment. "Miss Emma, if you still think Claire is just an employee here, allow me to correct you gently." She paused. Her gaze never left Emma, who now stood flustered, surrounded by rows of emptying chairs. "You can visit the resort's official website under the About Us section. In the founding history, the first name you'll see, it's not mine, it's not Nate's, it's Claire Thompson. The woman who laid the very first bricks for this place. The one who invested the most. The one whose vision brought Aurora by the Sea to life." A soft gasp rippled through the remaining guests. A few began pulling out their phones and quickly typing in searches. Claire narrowed her eyes slightly and delivered her final line like a blade across marble. "She's not an employee, she's the founder." Silence. No more nervous laughter. No more excuses. No one in Emma's family dared stand, let alone speak. And me, I still didn't say a word, because at that moment, my silence said everything. 1 week after the chaotic wedding, after the online posts and whispers finally settled, I was in my second-floor office at the resort reviewing a partnership contract with an international event company when the internal phone rang. "Miss Claire, 3 people are waiting for you in the main lobby. They say they're your parents and your sister." I sat still for a few seconds, my hand resting on the edge of the desk. Then I stood up, buttoned my suit jacket, and went downstairs. They were seated in the lounge across from the reception desk. All 3 of them stood the moment I walked into view. No one smiled. No one made the first move. For the first time in my life, their faces held no judgment, no expectations, only worry, and something else, something that looked a lot like fear. My father was the first to speak. "Claire, I know I was wrong. I was too stubborn. We mistreated you. But I want, if possible, for you to give this family another chance." My mother stepped in, her voice soft, careful. "I'm not asking you to forget everything. I just hope you'll allow us to start over, to rebuild what we lost." Emma stood with her head down, voice trembling. I have no excuse. I'm sorry, truly sorry." I looked at the 3 of them for a long moment. Then I spoke, calm, steady, without hesitation. "I'm no longer part of that family." The words landed like the final cut, not shouted, not harsh, just final, ending the illusion that I might someday return to being the obedient daughter they once tried to mold. I stepped forward, eyes clear and unwavering. Love isn't something you can buy back with a few late apologies. It's not an old keepsake you pull out of the closet, wipe off, and expect to hold like it was never broken. "I don't hate you," I said slowly, "but I've learned how to live without your approval, and now I don't want to return to being the person I had to leave behind just to become myself." No one replied. They stood there, silent, small. They once believed I didn't belong. In the lobby of the resort, guests passed through, luggage in hand, staff greeting them with bright smiles. My family looked so out of place, like strangers who had wandered in by accident. Like every other morning, I stood on the resort's balcony the next day, coffee in hand, eyes on the sea. The ocean breeze was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of salt and the soothing rhythm of crashing waves. Below, the front desk team was getting ready to welcome new guests. The beachfront garden, freshly trimmed, stood prepared for another vibrant wedding season. I took a deep breath, peaceful, still, free. A young staff member approached, eyes lit with excitement. "Miss Claire, there's a new couple who just arrived. They want their wedding here because they read your story online. They said they could feel the honesty in this place." I smiled and nodded gently. I didn't need a title from a family that once denied me. I built a whole life with people who trust me, value me, not because they're obligated to, but because they choose to. 15 years later, I've learned not just how to rise from rejection, but something even more important. Family without true love is just a loose thread. And sometimes you have to be brave enough to cut it loose. Being born into a family is one thing. Being loved, that's something else entirely. And today, I can smile and say, I found my real family, the ones who stay, even when no one ever asked them to. Before I end this story, I want to ask you, was I wrong to walk away from the people who brought me into this world? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you believe the story deserves to be heard. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps us going every single day. Wishing you a day full of joy, and I'll see you in the next video.